Two headlines tell the story of where the Utah Jazz sit. Keontae's time is coming. Would you trade for Zach LaVine? It's all next on Locked on Jazz. Pow.
You are Locked on Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
How are you? I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. Today on Locked on Jazz, what has happened with our 2-5 Utah Jazz, and where do we go from here? Plus, decisions, pick and roll is going to be a big focus the next 3 days. Decisions, clamoring for more Keontae George. Let's talk about it and what the timing comes. And would you trade for Chicago's Zach LaVine? Because all indications are they might be broken and they're willing to trade people. So let's talk about those things today. I am David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked on Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. Thank you so much for making Locked on Jazz your first listen every day. To the everydayers, you're the best. Greatly appreciate you. Hope you're doing well. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time. Download the Game Time app. Create your account. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. We're in Chicago. I'm trying this year where I give you the skyline of on YouTube. I give you the skyline of the city as like a virtual image instead of the back of some white hotel room wall. You'll have to tell me whether you think it's any good. Maybe I should be doing iconic NBA player shots behind me. So like this would be MJ, and then in Indiana tomorrow would do like Reggie Miller. I don't know. We'll come up with some idea. Creativity is sometimes my strength, sometimes not. So I thought our situation was really summed up by this. So I get an email every day that has, well, that's actually not the best way to say it. So I went to Salt Lake Tribune, and I go to Andy Larson's article, and the title is Jazz Half-Court Defense is the Worst in the NBA. And then I go to Sarah Todd's article on the Jazz. Utah's offense is in trouble. And I was like, oh, geez. I didn't see what Ryan Miller wrote a nice piece about Rudy Gobert and how good his defense was. And then Mike Conley telling a funny story about just kind of the weirdness of the trade. So those are the three people that cover the beat. Yeah, so one article was about that the half-court defense is the worst in the NBA. And then the other was that our offense is in trouble. And that might sum up how it feels right now for the 2-5 Jazz. I think the real issue right now is that in 3 of the 7 games, we've just gotten hammered. The Sacramento opener, we were somewhat lifeless. Just came out without a lot of juice, lost by 16. Phoenix, I still go on the back-to-back, like I'm not too surprised by that. On the back-to-back. And then we played really well against Orlando at home, but lost. And then lost to Minnesota by a million. So we've lost 4 of 5. We've lost 5 of 7 to start. We've lost 2 in a row. And we've lost 3 of the 7 just by a lot. And I think that's I think what the gut punch is to Jazz fans right now is like, whoa, like what's going on with that? I think, by the way, and this is like, I think we've been only favored in 1 game all year, and that was against Memphis, which is an interesting concept of like where other people's perception of us is compared to where our perception of us is. So that's interesting. I haven't seen what the FanDuel line is tonight. I'll look at it in a minute. We're 8-point dogs against Minnesota. That's a lot. But we didn't lose by 8. We lost by 30, like basically. So I got it. Let's talk about the offense for a second. We have shot, or the Jazz, whatever. I saw Mark Boyle, who I admire, saying that announcers should never use we. I guess in this conversation, it's we collectively. We're rooting for the team. The Jazz have shot below the 50 percentile line, below average offensively shooting in 6 of the 7 games, and then have this one game against Memphis where we couldn't miss. If you look at our effective field goal percentage, we're in the 31st percentile against Sacramento, 44th percentile against the Clippers, 40th percentile against Phoenix, 22nd percentile against Denver, 45th against Orlando, and 7th percentile against Minnesota, and 98th against Memphis. It's a little like disconcerting that offensively we're just not making shots. We're doing an incredible job on the offensive glass. We've been a little intermixed of whether we get to the free throw line or not. And we've had some better turnover games. It's gotten worse as the season's gone on. The last 3 games, turnover-wise, are way up again, back up to 18%, which is bad. We're, I think, 29th in the NBA in turnovers. So offensively, it is a struggle. Sarah had a bunch of theories on how to fix it. So if you want to read it in the Deseret News, she does great work, so feel free. It's an interesting question on how you fix it. Like, we just have a bunch of guys that are, one, underperforming, and I do think we have guys that are doing something they've never done before. I really think that the last 25 games of the season is a mirage to a regular NBA season. And so while Ochai Agbaji and Talen Horton-Tucker and Walker Kessler and Chris Dunn got a ton of time in the final 25 games of an NBA season, what they're doing right now, playing teams at full strength who are coming at you full bore with a really well-executed game plan, with absolutely no difficulty, with absolutely no fatigue, is a really, really different thing than a team slogging its way through the final 25, playing, missing 2 or 3 players, either getting ready for the playoffs or getting ready for the draft. And so I think we're seeing guys scuffle through that. I mean, Talen's kind of been all over the map, right? He's had brilliant games, brilliant stretches. The Minnesota game was a perfect capsule of that. He had an absolutely fabulous 5-play stretch, and then he thought he had it rolling and just kind of went to some other place, and then it kind of fell apart. Some of his assist numbers are really, really good. I know that that there's a feeling, and I thought Will Hardy made an interesting comment about him. He makes some bad plays every night, and they're super loud. But if you look at the overall body of work, it's actually been, I think, better than anyone realizes, or better than he's probably getting credit for. But but it's not flawless. This is the first time he's ever done this. And there's some interesting statistics you can use to look at one thing. One of them is potential assists, which his numbers are actually pretty good on potential assists. And what potential assists are is really the idea of, when you're making a pass to someone getting a shot. And I think that's actually it's a better number than assists. I actually kind of hate the assist number. Like right now, so Jordan's struggling. Like if you make a bunch of assists to Jordan, passes to Jordan, and he doesn't, and it doesn't come together, is that your fault? Talen's about 12th in the league in potential assists at 13 a game. So he's actually throwing passes that are leading to shots. Tyrese Halliburton leads the league at 19. It's just kind of a different number to look at. And the other thing I think is an important one is assist points created. In other words, an assist for a 3 is better than an assist for a 2. Talen's pretty low on that assist. But that also might be because his assist numbers are low compared to his potential assist numbers. Most guys, he's below 50% of his assists are actually getting potential assists are actually getting converted to assists. I think he's the only guy in the NBA with that. So that's worth noting. All right, on the defensive end, it's a scuffle right now. And the next 2 games are going to be really interesting because we're 30th in the league in pick and roll defense. And Chicago runs the 3rd most amount of picks, and Indiana runs the most. So there's going to have to be a step up in what's going on with pick and roll coverage, because Zach LaVine, Nikola Vucevic, DeMar DeRozan, Nikola Vucevic, Kobe White, Nikola Vucevic is coming at you tonight. They'll run 77 picks tonight, 3rd most of anyone in the NBA. They're broken, by the way. They don't look good at all. And they statistically look worse. So tonight is a night where the Jazz could get right. And then go to Indiana, and Indiana's good offensively, but not in flat ball. And then go to Memphis, who did finally win a game. Like the next 3 games are pretty winnable ball games. Orlando, by the way, just crushed the Lakers the other night. They might actually be fairly good. So there is a real chance right here to kind of get out of this feeling where each headline is like disaster, but on other sides of the ball. But it's going to take guarding the pick and roll well the next 2 nights. If they don't guard the pick and roll well the next 2 nights, then this could be 2 more ugly nights. Though I don't think Chicago's capable of making it ugly, frankly. They're just not. The data on them is fairly incredible. Now, the only worrisome thing on Chicago is they're just not playing well collectively. Like as a group, it's kind of a disaster from talking to people around here. Here's an example of this that's just crazy. And obviously, at some point, this rectifies itself, and hopefully not tonight. Nikola Vucevic, catch and shoot threes last year, shot 35%. So far this year, 29. Kobe White last year shot 39%. So far this year, 21. Patrick Williams shot 42% on catch and shoot threes. So far this year, 18. Zach LaVine, 42% on catch and shoot. So far this year, 35. Alex Caruso, 38% on catch and shoot. So far this year, 33. Like, at some point, that fixes itself. Hopefully not tonight. So should the Jazz make changes and alter lineups and those things after 2 losses, one of which was a down-to-the-wire loss to Orlando, and the other was a dog against Minnesota? We'll discuss it as we continue on Locked On Jazz. Today's show is brought to you by Murdoch Chevy, located in Woods Cross and in Logan. The Chevy truck, it's Americana. The Murdoch's, it's Utah. So it's a perfect mix. When you think about it, it's 90 years in Utah of giving you the absolute perfect experience, making sure you have, as they like to say it, the no regrets. And I know how important this is actually truly to Blake and the Murdochs, is that literally, like, I don't want to go to the grocery store. I don't want to go to church. I don't want to go around town and have someone have a bad experience with us. We simply just don't want it to ever happen. So the no regrets experience. Then the Chevy lineups of cars are greatly improved. The new Trax has got more room, looks absolutely fabulous. The Suburban and the Tahoe. The Blazer is getting a bunch of awards. They've got $7,000 off the 2023 Silverado 1500 Crew Cab Custom right now for you on the truck end of things. And all sorts of great deals taking place, plus a great lineup of cars for whatever you're looking for. If you're looking for the SUV lineup, the crossovers, then you're talking about the Trax, the new Trax, the Blazer, the Trailblazer, and the Tahoe and the Suburban. If you're thinking about the trucks, it's the Colorado and the Silverado, with the Colorado being the smaller, zippier one, and the electric Bolt has impressed people from top to bottom. I got a friend who's got it, loves it when he's not biking to work. He's taking that. Perfect. Fits the brand perfectly, doesn't he? It is Murdoch Chevy, located in Woods Cross, also located in Logan. If you're going to stop by, please feel free to just send me a little email, and let's get you the Locked On VIP experience. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for your first purchase for $20 off. When you're buying tickets, and I actually almost did this last night, I was debating between the Blackhawks game, Hamilton, and Nate Bargatze. Nate Bargatze was the most expensive of the 3, by the way. I've seen Hamilton twice, and frankly, my knee was flaring up, so I decided to be very good and stay in. Anyway, but I was on the Game Time app checking them all out because I can get last-minute tickets, flash deals, zone deals. I can buy tickets and see the views from all the seats in the venue. I get the lowest price guarantee. If there's a lower price for those tickets, I discover it somewhere else, then they will give me a credit of 110% of the difference. Zone deals, you pick the section. Game Time picks the seats for an average of 18% savings. So you really get everything you want. Best price, you get to see your seats, and you get them easily delivered right to your email. That's what makes Game Time the app to be using for your ticket purchasing. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem, spell out LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKEDONNBA. You got it, Locked On NBA for $20 off. Download the Game Time app. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Thanks so much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day, and to the everydayers. We greatly appreciate you. Jazz Bulls tonight, 6 o'clock your time, Sirius XM. If you are a subscriber, we'll have the hometown broadcast of the Jazz. Just tell your smart speaker if it's linked to play Utah Jazz basketball on Sirius XM. I don't know what I think of this virtual screen on YouTube. I keep disappearing and thinking my body's gone. All right, I know people are clamoring for changes. What choices does Will Hardy have right now? So one would be to play with the starting lineup on the front court with John Collins, Walker Kessler in some capacity. So Walker's not playing great and having the impact that he had last year to close the year. You could decide you're going to take John Collins out of the lineup. He did not have a great defensive start the other night. He's been playing statistically really pretty well. The only problem on that one, though, is Walker's not playing great either. So the problem when you take a guy out of the lineup is he feels like he's the scapegoat. Now, our starting lineup is minus 20 per 100 possessions so far, which leads you to believe, like, okay, it doesn't seem like it's working great. And David James asked Will Hardy a really interesting question the other day at the press conference when he asked him, like, when do you make changes? And how much, he actually asked him, how much data or, sample size do you need to know if something's working or not? And he said, honestly, I need 50, 60 games, but you don't have it. And then the next comment he made is you even have less time if things aren't going well, which I thought was eye-opening, right? Like, so you don't have enough time actually to make the decisions you want. And then even if you're not playing well, you feel like the urgency. So there's a legitimate argument that, hey, the starting lineup is a minus 20. And so if we start with the front court, would it be better if we went back to Kelly starting for John? Would it be better if you slid Lowry over to the 4 and brought somebody else in as the 3? Would Ochai somehow help the lineup as a 3 and you're suddenly playing John as the 4? The fact that Walker's not playing great makes it a little hard. I mean, this is where coaching is super hard. It makes it a little harder that if you bench someone and they're going to be bothered by it, they're going to want to know why Walker wasn't benched, right? I think that's a fair thought. The lineup of Jordan Clarkson, Taylor Horton-Tucker, Lowry Markin, John Collins, and Kelly Olynyk at center has been really good. So you could you got to read Walker and figure out whether or not making a change there off data would somehow relieve that pressure and help Walker out. It's got some unnatural shooting or some unnatural offensive rebounding numbers in it that lineup's grabbed 46% of all offensive rebounds, which is not sustainable. And teams have shot an unnatural 36% effective field goal percentage against it. So it's plus minus in only 40 possessions is not one that's going to last for very long. The one you're all asking about is, well, what about Keontae? Keontae's the new shiny toy and he's the rookie and we all love him and we all want to see him. And he's playing well. Two things. One thing that actually makes all this difficult is nobody off the bench is just playing so great that it's okay, this is completely obvious. Keontae's making a play or two every night that shows you that he's going to be really, really good. And then he's making a play or two every night that makes you remember he's 19 and had a negative assist to turnover ratio in college. And remember on Keontae, he did not play point guard at Baylor. And he told us that he did not play point guard in high school until midway through his senior year when the starting point guard got hurt. So he has never been a natural point guard. And you can see him still trying to work through that a little bit. Here's the scenario on Keontae you have to avoid. This is the one that if you're Will Hardy, there's two scenarios with Keontae you have to avoid. One is that you go to Keontae. This one I think is harder for fans to understand than it is for players to understand. If you talk to every player, they'll be like, oh, yeah. Talk to every fan yeah, I don't care. And that is, if you're going to go to Keontae, it has to be obvious to the locker room. If you go to Keontae prior to Keontae being obviously better than everyone else, then the signal to the locker room is that it's not fair. I don't have your back. We're playing guys for the future. Right now it doesn't matter. And then you're going to have a really hard time getting buy-in from your players on anything that's going on because they're all going to start worrying about their situation if the team is not worrying about them. Okay, so the minute if the ecosystem, Will Hardy talked about this in the answer to David James. He said the ecosystem of the locker room has to be right for moves too. So if the ecosystem for the locker room is not ready for a move of that significance, then then that can have implications. Here's the scenario that I actually worry about. And the NBA is really, really hard. And it's really, really hard on young players. And the Jazz last year, I've rarely seen a team get two guys ready as well as they did with Ochai Agbaji and Walker Kessler last year. It was Will Hardy's management of that, and it was for the front office was just brilliant. The worry that I would have if I were the Jazz, Keontae is if you went to Keontae tomorrow, or today, which we may do, for all you know. The concern I would have is that you suddenly go 1-9 and he's shooting 34% from the field and 28% from three, and you got to make another change back the other direction. Like, I would rather be a week or two late in the sense of, like, where he is, make sure he's totally ready for this and that he's going to thrive, than any possibility at all that you put him out there too early because the team's not playing well. Like, this is where, if I were the Jazz, I would get super selfish about Keontae's individual development. And it's funny because you think about it, it's like, well, play Keontae fast because that's the long term for the Jazz. Give him the time, throw him out there. Like, that's our concern. Okay, I agree. Keontae's long-term super important for this franchise. 16th pick of the draft, and he's looked really good, and he's got great instincts. He throws a beautiful pocket pass to Lowry. He does all sorts of great things. My concern is Keontae at that point. And so the scenario I'm trying to avoid more than any other is that I roll Keontae out as a starter for 30 minutes a night too quickly, and all of a sudden it's a bit much. You're facing first-tier guys every night. You suddenly shoot 36%, 28% from three. You're turning it over 5 times a game. You have 4 assists. You're 1-9 in the stretch, and everyone's looking around going like, when are you pulling him? Everyone being your teammates. That's the scenario that under no circumstance do I want as a Jazz fan and a Keontae fan. I'd rather let everyone else play out their struggles, their development. Let's see if Talen's inconsistency can become 3 good, 1 bad instead of 1 good, 1 bad. Like, does that growth development? Can Jordan find a way to coexist? Right now, he's so visibly frustrated. It's clear he's not working well with any of the guys on the floor. Can Colin, who kind of shows these spurts of genius and then has 6 turnovers the other night, find some rhythm in the systems and things like that? Can they all have some more time with it? It is hard to play Talen, Colin, and Jordan all. They're so very similar in the way they play and play all of them. And can something just shuffle itself out naturally by giving it an extra week, 2, 3? Now, as Will said, you don't get the sample size you want. And when you're not playing well, it feels like there's an urgency to do it sooner. And I don't know if 2 and 5 is that urgency. The next 3 games are all winnable. So you either have, this is where coaching's impossible. If you have a move you think's really going to work, you probably got to do it sooner. On the other end, like, this team's showing it can beat the Clippers, it's showing it can beat Memphis. It's shown it can play well at stretches. Can it now get it together against a Chicago team that's having a tough time, an Indiana team that doesn't defend, just plays a lot of offense, and you can probably play a pretty good game against them? And can you get it done against a Memphis team in the first in-season tournament game? Well, then this group suddenly comes out of that like, oh, now we're 5-5. We'll play the Blazers at home in another in-season tournament game. We're 6-5. Like, we feel pretty good. And then everybody can kind of naturally progress. So it's really tricky. Would you trade for Zach LaVine and his $40 million a year contract? Let's talk about it when we continue on Locked on Jazz. Today's show is brought to you in part by our friends over at FanDuel. The FanDuel Sportsbook is the #1 sportsbook in America. It is the official sportsbook of Locked On. It is a partner with the NFL and the NBA, and it's got a great deal for you. Here's the deal. You ready? You, new customer, gets $150 in bonus bets if you win a moneyline bet. So that's $150 if your team wins. If you're thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get on the action. Spreads, player props, over-unders, and more all over at FanDuel. Go to FanDuel.com/LockedOnNBA. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOnNBA. Like, if you think you really know that Zach Wilson is going to lead the Jets to a win tonight over the Chargers as a 3.5-point dog, that's your chance. If you know that, you're going to have a good night. Pacers play Wemby. Oh, my goodness, he's amazing. Tonight, 8.5-point favorite. 76ers play the Wizards, an 11-point favorite in our matchup between the Jazz and the Bulls. The Bulls are a 3.5-point favorite over the Jazz. Pelicans, without C.J. McCollum for probably at least 4 to 6 weeks, are in Denver at a 6.5-point dog, and Sacramento's a 1-point favorite in Houston. Boston and Minnesota is a good one tonight. Boston's a 4-point favorite on the road. Oklahoma City and Atlanta's another good one. Atlanta's got the number 2 offense in the NBA right now. They are a 3.5-point favorite in Oklahoma City. That's a surprise. And the Clippers are a favorite in New York. Wow, what does FanDuel know that we don't know? It's all at FanDuel. Go to FanDuel.com/LockedOnNBA to get your greatest deals. Or excuse me, FanDuel.com/LockedOn. And kick off the NBA and the NFL season. FanDuel, official sportsbook of Locked On. So Chicago doesn't feel good. Word around town here, talking to people. Zach LaVine. Zach LaVine has been signed to a $40 million contract this year. $43 million next year, $46 million the year after that, and a $49 million player option after that. It might be one of the most untradeable contracts in the NBA right now. At the same time, if the Utah Jazz traded for Zach LaVine, he'd be our second best player. Right? Don't you think? If the Utah Jazz traded for Zach LaVine over the last 4 years has averaged 26, 27, 24, and 25 points a game. He's a career 38% three-point shooter over the last 5 years. He's taken 8 a game, shot 38, 42, 39, 38. He's having a bad year this year. Murmurs that he and Billy Donovan are there's just murmurs around this poor team. They had a players meeting after the first game. He is a efficient player. His effective field goal percentage has been above league average, 53, 60, 55, 56. He is not thought of as a good defensive player. He's not thought of as a high IQ player. He is thought of as an elite athlete. And he is a $43 million, $46, and $49 million player for the next 3 years. The YouTube question of the day: would you trade for Zach LaVine? So you can go to trade machines and figure it out. Like, John Collins has our largest contract. He'd probably have to be involved. Some Taylor Horton-Tucker, Colin Sexton probably has to be involved. And then I don't know, like, is Zach LaVine's contract so bad that you're doing it without a draft pick because you're just taking his huge contract? Do you have to trade one of our 5 young players that the Bulls think have hope? Certainly, I don't think you'd be willing to trade Keontae. I don't think you'd be willing to trade Walker. Ochai would be a tough pill to swallow. We don't know enough about Taylor and Bryce yet. Can you do it without that? I mean, obviously, would you trade for Zach LaVine is a wide open question that doesn't make any sense. But, like, the first question is, like, are you willing to make a move for Zach LaVine? The second question is obviously, what's the price? With that contract at 43, 46, and 49, the Bulls might be just willing to save money. Like, there's a chance the Bulls would just be willing to be out from under it, take whatever 2 players from the Jazz whose contracts are shorter and save a bunch of money. Like, just to put it, just not saying this is a trade and I don't want to trade these guys. I'm just giving you the concept. If you traded $25 million John Collins and 11 of Talen Horton-Tucker, you probably need to throw in Ochai. But anyway, this is not about players. This is just about money. They would save about $13 million next year, $40 million the year after, and as much as probably $40 million the year after that. Is that enough for them to trade Zach LaVine? Do they actually think Zach LaVine averaging those kind of points with this contract garners draft picks? And then are the Jazz willing to trade any of their 2025? We don't really have a 2024 pick. We can't really trade our pick yet until it's too far down the road because it's encumbered by the Oklahoma City deal. Would you be willing to trade any of the Cleveland or Minnesota picks or do some sort of pick swap where you're giving up an asset for Zach LaVine, who has not won a lot in his career? Now, the other one on Zach LaVine, I was looking at him last night. He opens his career up with 5 coaches in 5 years. He gets Flip Saunders for a year at 19. He then gets Sam Mitchell for a year. He's never thought of as an elite level coach. Tom Thibodeau for a year. Fred Hoiberg for a year. And then he gets Jim Boylan for 2 years. And now he has Billy Donovan. Like, maybe, I'm not sure. Here's the best way I would describe those coaches. What we've seen in Utah for the last 2 sets of coaches is 2 coaches in Quinn Snyder and Will Hardy who are absolutely brilliant at figuring out what a player does and maximizing that skill and getting that skill to its peak. Okay? You follow me? Like, they literally are able to say, all right, Lowry Markkanen, here you are, boom, boom, boom. And you can think about the players, even the like fringe players that Quinn Snyder like got to play well. And then when they went somewhere else, they were awful. Or they ended up out of the league. The amount of guys who played their last year with the Jazz under Quinn is incredible. Will Hart, that's what elite coaches do. Will Hardy, Quinn Snyder. I'm not sure that Billy Donovan, Fred Hoiberg, Jim Boylan, Tom Thibodeau, Flip Saunders, or Sam Mitchell fall into that category of maximizing their talent or maximizing their players. And so maybe, like, if you go trade for Zach LaVine, you actually have an opportunity with now having an elite coach who looks at his skill set and says, here's what you're doing. On the other end, I've watched 3 Bulls games last night. It's rough. And Zach makes plays every night that are just head scratchers. Getting beat baseline twice in a game, like, you don't get beat baseline one-on-one. You just don't. Unless you're, like, planning to bring a double, but there was no double there. Baseline's your friend as the defender. Offensive kick out, late game, down by 2, bombs a 3 from 40 feet. Like, whoa, what are we doing? So there is just kind of like a playing the game, not thinking the game aspect to his brilliance. But his brilliance is elite athlete, bona fide shooter, can get to the line 5-6 times a game, bona fide offensive player. It's an interesting concept. So I'm curious your comments of whether what you would do it. You can figure it out on trade deadline. I don't like talking about trading our players, but it's a player like we're looking at building. The argument on it a little bit is if you were to do it, it ups your talent level. It might make it a better ecosystem for guys to develop because your talent level's better. And even though that contract's brutal at 43, 46, and 49, he's good enough. He might be tradable again for your next set of pieces. On the other end, there's a lot of works on Zach LaVine's game. Be interested to read your comments of what you think. Feel free to email me at dlock09 as well, or text me at or tweet me at dlock09 on X, or put your comments in the comments on YouTube. dlock09. Let me know your thoughts on that. Thanks. Have a great day. Follow me on Instagram, Snapchat, and TikTok, and X at dlock09 for all the latest on the Jazz and what's happening as we get ready for the Jazz and the Bulls. See ya.